Hello, newsies, and welcome to the next installment of Neurodiversity Newsstand, the vlog. I'm Becca Laurie Hector, your host here at Neurodiversity Newsstand, both in our physical groups on the internet and on YouTube here. If you guys haven't been here before, Neurodiversity Newsstand is a little weekly summary of the news that we're seeing out in the neurodiversity world that we're talking about in my Neurodiversity Newsstand groups. So if you're not a part of those, head on over to Facebook or LinkedIn. I have them on both platforms, and go ahead and look for Neurodiversity Newsstand and join us. But in case you're not on there and that's not your deal, and maybe it's a little bit easier for you to just deal with it once a week, bringing you an audio summary. It's visual on option, I guess. But in any case, here we are at Neurodiversity Newsstand. And if you want to make sure that you continue to catch these, go ahead and like, share, comment so I know you're watching, but also subscribe so that you can get the notifications that the new video is up. Okay, so with that out of the way, I am going to take you guys through this week's news. Again, not a really heavy-duty news week for us. Kind of lots of little interesting stuff, but nothing that kind of came in and took the whole community by storm and was everything everybody was talking about. It just wasn't that kind of week for us. It's kind of the end of summer, and here, at least in the States, and it's just the beginning of thinking about summer, I guess, over there in like Australia. Hi, Babs, if you're watching. Yeah, so it's kind of the time of year when everybody's thinking about going back to school, and they're sort of on their last minute vacations and that kind of thing. And so it's like that space in between in life before everyone goes back to school, and while it's still summer and we're all enjoying it and nobody wants to work. So I think that's why we see a little dip in the news at this time of year. But I'm sure in September it will all come back. So I'm going to instead talk about the articles that I saw us talking about the most in our groups, and the ones that we all commented on the most, and then some of the other pieces that get shared in that group that I think are worth sharing with you guys, like good blogs, events happening, things like that. So this week, again, kind of slow, but there were some good articles. I want to start out with one that was shared more recently than any of the others. It came out later this week. But it had a shocking title, I think, and I think that was part of the reason that I looked at it, because it felt like it was kind of moving us back in time a little bit in some of our conversations. And the title of it was about autism diagnosis being overdiagnosed and kind of blurring lines, and that came out of Canada for us. And that's kind of a conversation that our community has had for quite some time, and what we've all kind of come to terms with is that the fact is that we didn't know a lot about autism. It's a relatively new diagnosis, and though autistic people have been around as long as human beings have been around, we didn't have a label, and we weren't able to kind of differentiate what makes our brains different. Now we can, but still we're in the early stages of understanding that it's not just something for boys. It's also a condition that can affect girls, myself included, and it's just a human condition. It's a different kind of brain. And so the idea that because our diagnostics got better, because it became more well known, because the research was coming out, because of all of these things and the availability of it all, of course diagnosis went up, and of course our numbers are changing. And so to imagine that it's being overdiagnosed is a piece that I struggle with. I'm not so sure that people are all that quick to throw out a label that comes with quite as much stigma as autism comes with. So I don't know that would be something you'd want to fake or fake for somebody. So I kind of struggle with that. So a bunch of us talked about all of the reasons why we thought this study was kind of off base within our group, and I thought, well, let me share it out there with you guys. It's out there. Somebody said it, wrote it, and it's in black and white, and worth reading, I think, just to know that thinking is still kind of out there. So that article is in there, and of course all the articles that I talk about, any of the blogs or any of that stuff that I talk about here, I will put links in the description of this video for you, so you could go ahead and read the whole articles of the ones that interest you. The next article I want to talk about is we've had the kind of two similar articles, like a kind of a theme-ish idea, but the conversations were around masking and compensation, social compensation, and masking that autistics do in order to kind of survive in the neurotypical world. The first one was called, was a study, actually. It was a summary of a study about the negative consequences of the compensatory strategies that autistics use in order to survive in a dominantly neurotypical world. And it talks a lot about all the things that we all on the spectrum already know, how exhausting those compensatory strategies are, how much effort it takes to learn them and kind of copy them. And how we take a lot of that on our shoulders the more time we try to be out in the world and be normal. And that the consequences for us on the spectrum are devastating, and really it takes its toll after a bunch of years not being authentic. Or not being allowed to be authentic. And so I was glad to see that a study was being done, and we're seeing some numbers put to it. Again, as with most studies in autism, there's never quite enough people being studied, and we don't have a lot of continued long-term engagement. And I hope to see that kind of change as our voices are being heard more, and we're kind of demanding proper compensation for our time and effort in the data collection piece. But that's a whole other story. I've written an article about that. You let me know if you want to see it before I get on a soapbox about it, because that's not what today is for. But so there's that article that came out. I think it's a good read. It's a nice overview. It's definitely stuff we have all heard before. I'd like to kind of label it what I call duh research, which is that we've all been talking about it anecdotally for such a long time and so loudly that then researchers do the study and boom, they get the answer we've been saying, and we're all supposed to go, oh my God, you have proof, like we needed it to kind of validate our experience all this time. So this is a bit of duh research, but I'm glad to see it out there for the research nuts, and I'm glad that we're still talking about this piece, because I think the piece of the masking piece and the compensatory strategies piece of our community and where we're at is kind of like, it's the next phase. It's like we don't want to have to not be ourselves. And when that starts to happen, I want to start seeing changes and differences in the offering of like social skills classes, for example. So we'll see where our community heads, but I'm glad that we're still talking about that, because that is probably the most exhausting part of being autistic, is the compensatory strategies. That and the negative self-talk. That'll kill you in a day. All right. In any case, before I digress too far, as it's a Friday and I'm feeling a little flippant, I don't know, I guess, I want to move on to a piece that was written by Eloise Stark, and she wrote this great piece called "Are You Neurotypical?" The autistic compensatory compensations and the cost kind of that we take to it personally. So, are you neurotypical was the question that she was asking, and I love it because she talks about it again in this piece. I'll stop hitting my desk any second now. Where she talks about a lot of the things that study was talking about, the compensatory strategies and what we kind of take on and what it feels like to have to do that all the time. And she kind of flips that on its head, and she gives us a nice anecdotal version of what that study is telling us. And so I kind of love that they came out the same week and we posted them the same week. So if you can take a look at both of those, I think it's sort of an interesting thing, not just for autistics, but for anyone to understand kind of the other side of the fence. And I think it's important, if we're trying to move towards true inclusion, where we're not putting that pressure on any one particular group to be like another kind of group. When we can get past that, I think we'll see that the result of that is that the compensatory strategies won't take so much of our energy, because we won't have to do it so much. And so that's kind of the hope. But I say, if you want to kind of get your knuckles dirty with that topic, these were two pieces that came out together and happened to do really well together, back to back, giving you both sides of it all, the science side and I think the personal side. So take a look at that one. And I think my other article, and I think this might be my favorite for the week, so I think maybe I'm leaving it for last for that reason. But there was a great piece by Emma Delmain that came out in the Aspergian this week. So if you don't follow either one of them, Emma Delmain is a fantastic advocate. And the Aspergian is kind of a collaborative of people's shared information. So check out both of those, because they put out Emma does fantastic work, and the Aspergian is always putting out really interesting articles. So please go ahead and check that out. And Emma's article was about autistic rights and the need for advocacy. Interesting, because the webinar, which I did finally last night, and it went really well, you guys, not that it really matters to you, but I had a good time giving it, and the presentation came out great, and I'm happy with the way that it went. But I was just talking about this idea of autistic rights and autistic culture and the neurodiversity movement, and the need for advocacy now, and what advocacy now looks like, and what needs to come next, and how important advocacy is for our community. So I think if you're an advocate, take a look at this piece by Emma. I thought it was great. It's a good one to share with people when they ask you what it's all about. I really enjoyed it. So Emma, shout out to you, the Aspergian. I really like this article. It was my win for the week, one that I'm going to keep on hand and remember to go back and read when I question why I'm still doing this, which happens more often than I guess I'd like to imagine. Some days are hard, you guys. That's just the way it is. Some days are really hard as an advocate, where we handle a lot on our shoulders. We take a lot in it, and it gets isolating, and it can be lonely, and it can also leave you questioning your purpose, I guess, sometimes. So it's nice to see other advocates out there writing things for other advocates. And so shout out to you guys. I really enjoyed that one. So I hope you guys will go back and read it. Other big things happening this week. More on the fun side of life, right? Okay, so oh, I forgot one. I'm sorry, I must talk about this, but I can talk about this in here. We shall. Great post of TEDx talk. The TEDx talk is by Chloe Everett, and it's called The Problem with ABA. And I love it because she gives us yet another perspective on what the issue is. And I think I get asked that question. I get asked about ABA and the autistic perspective on ABA and what neurodiversity is going to do about ABA and all of this stuff. And so it's again, like the other topic of compensation, we talk about it a lot, but it seems it just hasn't gotten through yet, and there's still more to talk about. So great presentation by Chloe Everett, really important stuff in there. If you have the time to sit and watch it, please do. I thought it was a really good one. And so it's been in our group, and we all seem to have enjoyed it. Another not to miss thing this week, Anlor Davin, who is a fantastic advocate from out on the West Coast. You don't hear a lot from her so much. She writes her books and she does articles here and there, but she's usually off teaching yoga and meditation. That's kind of her passion. But when we do hear from her, there's always really important stuff in there. She's someone who shares really valuable perspectives, originally from France, so she's been dealing with that kind of issue, the issue of how autism is handled in France for quite a bit. Now she's in the States and a good friend, and I enjoy her very much. She just did a podcast interview on Actually Autistic, the podcast, and I'd say it's worth listening to. She reminds us the importance of breath and self-care, and all of those pieces. So take a listen to Actually Autistic, the podcast, and have a listen to Anlor Davin's interview. Okay, another don't miss. And the last piece, I have it written on all these, ridiculous. Seriously, I use little orange Post-it notes all over the place just to do this. It's easier for me to see it in my own handwriting, I guess. But big thing this week, at least in my life, I guess for me, for all of the Spectrum women, the August 21st was the big year. It's been a year since we dropped Spectrum Women, the book, since we just had it published. It's been a year. And for our little anniversary, what we decided to do was take some questions from you guys and make sure that we answer them. We did little video answers for you guys, and we put them out throughout the day of our book anniversary. So I'm proud to say that I was so honored to be a part of that group of women, and I loved being able to answer your questions. So I answered two. There's two of mine out there, and then we've got answers from Kate Ross, Terry Main, who else did one? Renata did one. A few of them, Yen Perkis did one. So take a look on the Spectrum Women page. All of the videos are still up there. I will go ahead and stick a link of the Spectrum Women page for you at the bottom there, and you can scroll through and take a look at those videos. Maybe I'll post my videos on this channel somewhere. I don't know. But I had a good time. It's a fun way for to be able to connect with the people who are reading the book, for the people who care about the same things that I care about, and a great way to be able to give advice that is just kind of, it's not just for that person. It could be for somebody else. And that's how it felt. It felt like I was like sharing secrets with you guys a little bit. So I hope that was fun for you, and I hope you kind of go back and check those out because they were fun for us to do. And then last up, big shout out. If you guys are fans of Autistic Not Weird with Chris Bonnello, great Facebook page. She's so smart and so funny. Really great guy. So again, that's Autistic Not Weird, Chris Bonnello, but he's also a book author. So he wrote a book called Underdogs about kids on the spectrum, solving mysteries, I think. I want to say I'm right. I think I'm right. And then, so that was called Underdogs, and it went really well for him. So that's been released, and it's available for you on Amazon and all the other places that you can get ebooks. And he is currently now 95% fundraised for Underdogs 2 to come out. So if you guys are interested in reading more books, or you know teens, because I think it's really geared towards teens. If you know some teens on the spectrum that could use a good book, please check out Chris Bonnello's book Underdogs, and please keep an eye out for Underdogs 2, which, if he can get that last 5% of funding, you guys, he will go ahead and put it out. So yeah, that's it for us here at Neurodiversity Newsstand. I guess I could end us off with sharing a little bit about what's going on in my life, since I forgot to start the video that way, and I wasn't really thinking about it. I had kind of a an odd week this week. I had the webinar yesterday, so kind of the whole week leading up to it was, you know, am I missing a slide? Is it right yet? And kind of doing all those last minute things and really working on the presentation. So I've been kind of drowning in what is neurodiversity and kind of reading and researching and doing all of that stuff. But what it was for me, it was a great time to get back into it, get re-enthused about being an advocate, and really thinking about where I think the future of our community is going to go, because I spent a good chunk of that time when I was doing research going, geez, but this is where we came from, where are we going to go? And so I want to say I'm kind of excited. I'm working on a side project where I think I'll be working on a book that I hope will be coming out, and I'm going to be tackling advocacy in the age of ableism. It's something I'm interested in, and the more I'm trying to kind of make it something tangible that I can touch, the more I'm interested, the more I'm like, no way, I can't, you know, and these are important topics, and why isn't there something out about this? And so I'm getting excited for that, and so I hope to be able to make that come to fruition sometime this year for you guys, but we'll see. Can't get ahead of myself, but I can feel the percolations happening, and it's been really fun to get back here, at least with the news with you guys, and sharing stuff on YouTube and reconnecting this way, because I know so many of us prefer auditory or, you know, auditory processing over reading all those articles, but we still very much want to know what's going on in the news. So I'm happy to be able to kind of share that bit with you guys too. Well, that's it for me on this fine Friday. It actually looks like outside it's gonna probably rain, so maybe I'll like read and take a nap this afternoon and celebrate Fridayness with myself. But then I hope you guys have a good weekend. I mean, enjoy the weekend, catch up on the news, catch up on your rest, read something for fun. I don't know, do your own fun stuff. Don't forget what little 8-year-old you used to love out in the world, and go do it this weekend as summer comes to a close. I'll be back next Friday with you guys doing another edition of Neurodiversity Newsstand with the latest and greatest in neurodiversity news in a nutshell. I'm Becca Lori Hector. Please go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future editions. And go ahead, like, comment, and share, please, so I know that you're watching. Otherwise, I have no idea who I'm talking to. All right, you guys, have an amazing weekend. I will see you guys next Friday.